Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Ram Ram,
Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Ram Ram,
Hare Hare. Hare
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Ram Ram,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Ram
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Ram
Hare, Hare Rama, Rama
Hare
Rama,
Hare,
Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Hare,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Ram Ram,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Ram Ram,
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to the Spirit of Prabhupada. Happy New Year. For those who have not heard me talk about that yet. Happy New Year to everybody. Wish you a prosperous Krishna conscious year. So welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. This morning's text is from Canto 2, Chapter 10, and Text 8. We're very fortunate to have His Grace Dronacarya Prabhu. For those who may not know, he's the temple president of ISKCON Philadelphia. He used to give the class to, even though he comes online to serve us very, very nicely. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It's great to be here. Thank you very much, Parikshit Prabhu,
Hare Krishna.
and all the Harrisburg devotees. It's great to be with you on this Monday morning. And as Parikshit Prabhu said, Happy New Year. I don't think I got a chance to greet any of you yet. And the same sentiments that Parikshit Prabhu had with a very prosperous Krishna conscious New Year. May all the best be in your spiritual advancement, in your health, and all things that are favorable to you in 2026.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashottatara Shishimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashottatara Shishimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki.
Jai.
Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki.
Jai.
Prem Skaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki.
Yay.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki.
Yay.
Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki.
Yay.
Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki.
Yay.
Ganga Maya Ki.
Yay.
Ramana Maya Ki.
Yay.
Bhaktidevi Ki.
Yay.
Adhidaivic Ki.
Yay.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki.
Yay.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
Yay.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki.
Yay.
Nitai Gora Premanande.
Hari Bo.
All glories the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Tirtha Swamini Tinamane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shatatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Rayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirajit Nastu Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Nara Narayan Rishis, the supermost human beings, unto the Goddess of Learning, Mother Saraswati, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart becomes almost completely destroyed, and devotional service is established within one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Continuing the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, text number 8. Yo dhyātmiko yam puruṣaḥ sav evādhidaivikaḥ yas tatrobhaya-vicchedaḥ puruṣo ādhibhautikaḥ. Yo dhyātmiko yam puruṣaḥ sav evādhidaivikaḥ yas tatrobhaya-vicchedaḥ puruṣo ādhibhautikaḥ. Yo dhyātmiko yam puruṣaḥ sav evādhidaivikaḥ yas tatrobhaya-vicchedaḥ puruṣo adhibhautikaḥ. Please chant.
Yo dhyātmiko yam puruṣa sav evādhidaivikaḥ yastatrobhaya-vicchedaḥ puruṣo adhibhautikaḥ. Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Damodar, can you chant? I'm driving.
Okay, we'll go to synonyms. Yah, one who, adhyātmikaḥ, is possessed of the sense organs. Ayam, this, puruṣaḥ, personality, saha, he, so, that, eva, also, ādhidaivikas, controlling deity, ya, that which, tatra, there, ubhaya, of both, vicchedaḥ, separation, puruṣaḥ, person, he, for, ādhibhautikaḥ, the visible body or the embodied living entity. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyātmic person. The individual controlling deity of the senses is called the adhidaivic, and the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adhibhautic person. Purport. The supreme controlling summum bonum is the personality of Godhead and his plenary portion of Paramatma, or the supersoul manifestation. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:42, it is said, Atava bahu naitena kim jatena tavarjuna vishtavyaham idam krishnam ekam mashena shtitito jagat. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still apparently there are divisions of controller and controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of the light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god, as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are as much living entities as we are, but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the adhyātmic person, and the controller is called the adhidaivic person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god or even Brahma, or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods, by the lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. That which distinguishes the controller and the controlled, i.e., material body, is called the adhibhautic puruṣaḥ. The body is sometimes called puruṣa, as confirmed in the Vedas, in the following hymn. Sava esha puruṣo jnana rasa mayaha. The body is called the anarasa embodiment. The body depends on food. The living entity, which is embodiment, does not eat anything because the owner is spirit in essence. The material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and the controlling planetary deities in the Anarasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body, and man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter nonetheless. The sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. And it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus, the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnana-timbarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. The text once again. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyātmic person. The individual controlling deity of the senses is called the adhidaivic, and the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adhibhautic person. So when I first was chanting this verse yesterday, and I was looking, preparing, and I had was reading the Sanskrit. I thought that this verse was going to be about the three types of suffering that are present here in the material world, which are referred to as the adhyātmic, adhibhautic, and adhidaivic. And when I got into the translation, I saw it was quite different. And I didn't understand it at all because I was trying to see it through the aspect of the three kleshas, the sufferings that come of one's own body and mind, the sufferings that come from another living being, and then ultimately the sufferings that come from natural causes, which are disasters, etc., which are attributed to the devas. So I was a bit confused, and I thought to myself, well, maybe from what I know of the terms, which I'm not so proficient in Sanskrit, maybe there's a difference in the wording, and I'm just thinking it's very similar, but one or two words may make a difference. So, kind of looked it up, and it seems like usually when the terms adhidaivic, adhibhautic, and adhyātmic are used, there's a K with it instead of a C. I couldn't see much difference, but I guess what I came to realize is that the necessity of one, understanding a verse within the context, and two, having a pure devotee, as we have in Srila Prabhupada, be able to understand and give the purport and understanding so we can understand exactly what's going on. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the situation that's being spoken of in the verse very clearly. And then when you read the verse, it actually takes on much better context. So for that, we are, very grateful of Srila Prabhupada. If it was left up to our limited brains, at least for myself, I would be very confused. So the way the purport starts off and ends brings us to the ultimate purpose of what's being framed here in this portion of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That Krishna is the supreme controlling entity in the material world that is manifested in the form of the Paramatma, and the conclusion is that at the very end, that Krishna is the shelter for all, even though it may appear that there are other controllers and other people, other living beings that are above the human form of life, such as the demigods, that are in semi-control, that ultimately they are controlled by the supreme controller, Lord Krishna, and his plenary portion of the Paramatma. And therefore, who but Krishna can be our supreme shelter? This is also allowing us to see things that we don't necessarily take a look at in everyday life. We see what our eyeballs can see. And this understanding, realization, this condition is ādhibhautic, a concept of life. Srila Prabhupada, he talks about that even though there are different divisions in which the world is being managed, this universe is being managed, and we learn of the three guna avatars, and most of you are probably familiar with these: Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. And these avatars are put in place for controlling the different modes of material nature. Vishnu representing sattva gun, or maintenance of the universe. Brahma, rajagun, put in charge of creation, and Shiva in charge of tamagun, the destruction of the universe. But then even further, Srila Prabhupada writes that there's still divisions of controlling entities. Now, these demigods that are put in control of the various agencies of this world, which are connected to our bodies and our senses, he compares this to the food controlling department, where the controller of the food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is being controlled. We can look at this in two ways. We're made that take for ourselves. We are made of the same ingredients as the demigods. They have material bodies, and also our bodies are material, meaning that they will all expire at some point, and they're made of the material energy. Demigod bodies are made of not of the same type of matter, but it's still material nonetheless. For instance, on the sun planet, one can live in the sun, which our particular material bodies would not exist, or any type of body here on Earth would not exist. It shouldn't be too unfamiliar for us, because even here on Earth, there are certain bodies that can do certain things that other bodies cannot do. For instance, we cannot live in the water. We can visit the water, but we cannot actually live in the water constantly. Our breathing is different. We can't breathe underwater. And there are entities that are in the water that can't live on land, or else they will die immediately. But nonetheless, our bodies are both material, made of material substance. The other way to look at it is that we're similar in that the ingredients that our souls are made out of, now they are identical and completely the same. Sat Chit and Ananda. However, they're functioning in different ways. One is the controller of the food, and the other is the one being controlled. And that distinction is being given as adhyātmic, those beings that are being who are under control, and those that are adhidaivic, who are the controlling deities. And the example is the sun god. The sun god is in control of the planet of the sun and in charge of giving light and heat throughout the universe. And we could not see without the sun for that reason, and therefore the sun god is in control of the eyes. So we can be thankful, respectful, and grateful for the sun, and therefore give respects to the sun god. But what we'll find in Krishna's teachings throughout the Bhagavad Gita and here in Srimad Bhagavatam, that although gratitude is there and should and is very helpful in our spiritual life, we should not become distracted. As the Bhagavad Gita states, what one gets from serving or reclaiming water from an individual well can be achieved by a large reservoir of water. Each well is being served by that great reservoir. And similarly, all the demigods are being supplied by the Supreme Being, Lord Sri Krishna. And therefore, one can go directly to Krishna and still receive all the benefits that one would if they would serve each individual demigod. Krishna demonstrates this in his Govardhan pastime, where the cowherd men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, wanted to do puja to Lord Indra, because he was the controlling deity, the ādhidhaivikaḥ, of the rain. And they couldn't have crops without rain. So they have to do some puja. Ultimately, Krishna demonstrated that he was the controlling entity, the controlling person, even of Lord Indra. In this verse of the Bhagavad Gita that's being quoted here, 1042, this is after Krishna described his universal. Oh no, this is after Krishna. This is before Krishna is going to explain his universal form. But what he does is he explains all the ways in which he is present within the universe, all his glories. And he gets to the point where he says, But Arjuna, what is there a need for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. In that purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, there is a mission that regularly propounds that worship of any demigod will lead one to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the supreme goal. But the worship of demigods is thoroughly discouraged herein, because even the greatest demigods, like Brahma and Shiva, represent only a part of the opulence of the Supreme Lord. So it is Krishna who pervades himself, and he says, even with a fragment of myself. This isn't his full energy. This isn't his where God puts his everything 100% into it. He's saying this is just a fragment, which is a particle of himself, is necessary to pervade this entire universe. So it is Krishna who is the supreme puruṣaḥ, even though there may be individual puruṣas, many micro puruṣas. Ultimately, we are prakriti. We are the energy of God. And the energy is meant to serve the energetic, the puruṣa. One part of this is that Krishna mentions here that, or excuse me, Srila Prabhupada mentions that the difference between the controlled and controller in the material world, the adhidaivic and the adhyātmic, it's a difference between fruitive activities. The controlled living entity is called the adhyātmic person. The controller is called the adhidaivic person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Fruitive activities are otherwise known as karma. These are all temporary designations and temporary situations. The life of a demigod is almost inconceivable to us as humans. It is so long. But Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, all the way up to the planets of the demigods, all the way up to Brahma Loka, all the way down to the lowest position here in the material world, are all places of repeated birth and death where suffering takes place. So these are all karmic positions, and therefore he's stated that one can become a demigod if one really wants to become a controlling being in this material world. One can become the sun god or even Brahma and ascend to the upper planetary systems. How? By a high grade of pious work. This again is not recommended because even if one ascends to such a position, and here in Kali Yuga, I can't imagine how one could even begin to practice such. But a high grade of pious work, the formula, if you research it out, through the practice of sacrifice, through meditation, through worship of the individual demigods, and ultimately pleasing the Supreme Lord, the Paramatma, who is said that he puts people into different positions of the controller and the controlled. The Paramatma will fulfill such a desire. We should not become distracted by this because, again, our process is to serve the supreme living being, the Paramatma within, who is a representation of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. It's also interesting to see how it says that it's ultimately the Paramatma who puts everybody in different positions. And this should also be properly understood. It is not, excuse me 1 second, sorry, but I thought I turned my phone off. It is not that the Paramatma is just randomly choosing who should go to become a demigod and who should become a being here on this earth or in any of the other planetary systems. This is not a random activity. This is all based upon our fruitive activities and the desires of the living individual. And is the Paramatma who is actually sanctioning and facilitating such. We are not necessarily creating the situation completely ourselves. These activities have to be sanctioned and directed by the Paramatma, the Super Soul. All of this brings us to the conclusion that it is the Supreme Being, Lord Sri Krishna, who is the shelter of all. All these other situations are material, they're transitory, and they can change at any time. But our supreme shelter, Sri Krishna, that is an eternal relationship. And that is a relationship that is worth cultivating. While we may still have gratitude to the various demigods, recognition that the demigods exist and that there's actually somebody superior here in this material world to us is actually a healthy consciousness to have. It is also a healthy consciousness to be able to see how the universe, at least to some limited degree which we can see, how it is working beyond what our particular eyes can see and what our mind can conceive of. But let us not at the very end come to the conclusion that there is anybody other than Lord Sri Krishna who is providing the shelter for everyone. Okay, with that, I will stop and see if there are any comments or questions about this particular verse and concept that is being presented here.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Very nice class. And I would have been thrown off too. Sort of, but still, it was a different way in which you brought the purport out for this. So this is the time to unmute yourself. If you have a question, comments, takeaway, please unmute yourself and speak up for all of us to hear. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Dronacarya. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare
All
Krishna.
good.
Mother
Prabhupada.
Sweet. Please accept mine. Jai Srila
Thank
Prabhu.
you for this wonderful class. I have to say that, sometimes you say how Krishna arranges these verses for you. And this is one of those really intense verses, pretty intense, at least for me, that I was really appreciating how you addressed it. As you were speaking and sharing, Dronacharya, I was really thinking, how everything is controlled ultimately by the Supreme Lord. Even the demigods and the weather and this and that and whatever, right? And yet we still think that we have some level of control even within our environment. So I was just realizing, Dronacharya Prabhu, that, we're beginning this year, we're smack in this winter, right? That's how we begin our year. With really cold temperatures, right? And we get faced by so many challenges. How can we remind ourselves, like you have been talking about, even the demigods are controlled by the Lord, right? If even they don't have full control. So what to speak of us? So how can we develop, or how can we remind ourselves? I think that's the key word. How can we remind ourselves that ultimately it's the Supreme Lord that is fashioning our individual lives as He thinks it's best, and just surrender, which is a very difficult thing.
Yeah. That's a good question, because we're challenged with this all the time. Um, um, I found for myself, and I don't know, I guess it's attributing to kind of growing in Krishna consciousness, but it could also be just kind of growing older in life with life experience. You tend to see more that everything you felt you were in control of, actually you're not. And I think as you're younger, in younger bodies, you tend to think that you're in control of a lot more. You're invincible, you're infinite. And as you grow older, you start to see people differently, you start to see situations differently. Similarly, as you grow in Krishna consciousness, you do the same. And that's attributed to the hearing process. So, to answer your question, it's very important that we read and study our scriptures. When we read, we reflect, and we take some time to be able to say, how is this, can I apply this in my life? How do I see this unfolding in everyday life? And not every verse is going to have an immediate connection to you, but repeated reading and hearing, as we're doing in Srimad Bhagavatam class, uh, we will become very conversant in the scriptures, and we'll start seeing things as they are. We'll start being able to see situations that arise in material nature, not through our own speculations of the mind, but we'll start seeing things through the eyes of the scriptures. We develop this Shastra Chakshusha, being able to see through the eyes of the scriptures. And these scriptures are none different than Lord Krishna. His message is none different than himself. So we then begin to see things in the way through a divine vision. Then when we see situations like extreme cold, we see extreme heat, we then begin to think, matra sparsas tu kunteya sitoshna sukadukata agamapi ano nityas tam statikshakshva bharataha. Right? We start thinking, okay, Krishna tells us the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress are like the disappearance and appearance of the winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception. And a sober person, they have to remain steady in their service throughout. They have to be able to see what is actually happening. Otherwise people complaining, oh, here we go, another winter. Oh, why did it have to snow? It was on my birthday and it had to rain on my birthday. Why did it have to rain? It was graduation day of all days, it had to be the hottest day of the year, and just we understand that this is, we're not in control of these things. And the days that are meaningful to us, they're just random days. Our birthday, graduation day, this day, that day, these are all random days to us. And there's just a huge, much bigger system that's going on around us. And we have to remain cognizant, but also transcendental to it all. And we remain transcendental by hearing and being remaining in Krishna's service regardless of the situations.
That was very helpful because we, in yesterday's Sunday program, we covered 214. So it's really like opportune that you were reciting that verse, Dronacharya. There's one point, I don't know if someone else has a question, but I really wanted to piggyback on one question. One comment you said, Drona, was, you were saying how important it is to always be reading, always be reading and studying and learning and hearing. We get a deeper meaning of what we hear. Lately, I have been reminded, just my mind, just me, a lot, repeatedly actually, about Srila Prabhupada's instructions. One time he hand wrote this letter to his disciples, all should attend morning program. You've seen that, all should attend this, all should chant this, all should do this, da 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 da. There's like such a nice handwriting of Srila Prabhupada. So, aristocratic, I think, his handwriting in that letter. And sometimes we think, oh, but Srila Prabhupada wrote that for his disciples. Doesn't apply to me. How can we really see that? Because actually, it's applying to us, and sometimes we tend to slack to follow the basic. And now that we're on Zoom, it's even much easier. There's no driving to the temple for the morning class. So how can we see the importance, Dronacharya, of attending, hearing, reading Srila Prabhupada's instructions and books regularly?
Yeah. Well, you have the instructions of the spiritual master, as you were just saying. At the very least, in gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, who has written these books. And if you've come to the Krishna consciousness movement and you have some appreciation for Srila Prabhupada, you can at least, read his books out of gratitude to him. But there's a more philosophical component to this. And this is, you get this earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the first chapter. Chapter 2, first canto, chapter 2, text 17, where Krishna says, Sutta Goswami is speaking. He says, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So, if we want to make advancement in Krishna consciousness, the cleansing of the desire for material enjoyment from the heart, to rid ourselves from material enjoyment, is done by the super soul when the devotee develops the taste and the urge to hear the messages of Krishna. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, he says, messages of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, are non-different from him. Whenever there is offenseless hearing and glorification of God, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. So that's one way, to look at it, that this is our opportunity to associate directly with Krishna and his pure devotee. And Prabhupada's saying, when you do it in an offenseless way, with attention, with respect, you're actually directly associating with the Supreme Lord, personally. So, if the taste isn't there, that's also stated in this section. If we don't have a taste for hearing, then it says, by serving the devotees who are completely freed from all vices, a great service is done. By such service, one gains an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shushusho Shuddhanasha Vasudeva Kataruchi. Then we have to continue to do by performing devotional service under the guidance of pure devotees, following those instructions, like you mentioned, that Srila Prabhupada wrote. We will gradually gain an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. By serving these devotees, the spiritual master, we become engaged in activities which are meant for our progress in spiritual life. And it begins to erode away of our hankerings and material desires. So that's the advice of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But hearing and reading is so powerful. We just have to dedicate some time in our life to do it. And it should be done with attention. Yeah, you're right. These Zoom classes aren't always the best. You never know who's there and who's not there, who's logged on and who's just listening and who's, who's eating their breakfast and who's having a conversation. You can't really tell. But it's better than, for many people, it is actually making an impact. And you see, at least I know in Philadelphia, and I'm sure you can say here, is that there's people that daily have been coming ever since COVID. And they've gone through since the very beginning of the Bhagavatam. And they would have never done that. And they can tell you their own testimony of how it has changed their life. Daily hearing. So yeah, but we do need to have some attention in our reading. And therefore I recommend for the devotees to just, if you can do more, but at least take 20 minutes a day where you say, I'm doing nothing else. I'm putting the phone away, locking the door, and I'm just going to spend time in the scriptures. And if you can do more and expand that, but 20 minutes a day, if you haven't read the Bhagavad Gita all the way through, 20 minutes a day, you should be through the Bhagavad Gita as it is, in about, 8 months or so. And you'll just say, wow, I never thought I could do that. But just a little bit of time a day with attention.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful idea. Taking that time off. As you were talking, we were answering the question, I was just thinking what our spiritual master said, that you work into your schedule. You work into your schedule, then you commit to it like that. The hearing. And this text that you quoted, Srimata Swagata Krishna, Krishna said, Paramatma cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages. It is so plain. We're sitting here worried about how we can get ourselves away from material enjoyment, because this is how we get from the material world back to the spiritual world. We have to stop material enjoyment. Here the answers is just keep hearing the messages, keep hearing, and it will just fall in place. So all you have to do is just keep hearing. And if we hear and then we chant, if we hear so much, you're gonna chant more attentively too. That's also one of the benefits. So I'm not saying anything new, just make it a point. We just started the year, work it into the schedule that this time I stop and I hear. Or when I'm driving, I hear. Like that. And you just keep hearing. Boy, it makes a big difference in one's life, and tells you just you're gonna get away from the desire for material enjoyment. And the material enjoyment is very much tied to the four regulator principles. So you just get away from that, automatically the regulator principles also fall in place, just like that. So we shouldn't make it difficult on ourselves. Just keep hearing. First thing, so Papa has so many times, the first thing is to hear. So here we go. It's very obvious now. Thank you for bringing it up. And the question that was asked to us, yeah, Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna.
So, any other comments, questions? Shane was asking, well, he has some in the chat, so I'll just read that. Unless, Donna, you want to read it yourself, it's up to you. You want to read?
Please accept my Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for the wonderful class. Beautiful points on the greatness of the super soul and everything. Jai. Thank you, Shane, for that appreciation. I appreciate you being here.
Right. Yeah, very much so. This is a nice class to, turn us to the fact that the demigods actually control all the senses. Krishna has given us the right, like that. An example that was given about that we can't see without the light. And the light, the greatest light is the sun. No light comes anywhere close to the kind of light that the sun gives. And it is the sun god. So then, yeah, Vivashwan and Surya, he is one that's done, has that responsibility. And Indra controlling, like that, the rains, and it's important. So we have to respect them. We have to respect. We're not supposed to worship them. We worship Krishna, then all the demigods are satisfied. But we definitely have to respect the demigods for what they do, for what they do. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. And even when we look at like I was just thinking how you experience maybe some of the ādhidaivica sufferings that are there, like because sun is really intense. You can communicate directly. This is Surya. Surya, wow, you've really, you see the glories of Surya, how powerful you are, or the rains or the wind, I remember, my son, whenever it's windy out, he just things he heard from the youth is saying, wow, Vayu is really strong. Like
Okay.
it's like you're seeing like the power of Vayu and the wind. You can develop and actually see that there's a personality behind this. This is not just happening randomly by some chance. That there's actual, and you can, this is also part of personalism. Seeing that, there's actually a controlling being, entity, demigod, behind all these elements, behind all these senses. And we're part of a bigger system. It's just not all about us.
And even the timing of it, the sun comes up and then the sun goes down, and everything, the way it's controlled by the sun god, it's incredible. We just assume, it's 6 o'clock, it's getting the 7. The sun will just come up. People have made the sun will come out tomorrow, bet your bottom down. There will be sun, but they don't realize that it's actually there's a sun god that makes sure the sun comes out the way it does. Or, so it's to hear from Krishna consciousness from Srimad Bhagavatam is such an eye opener. So many things become clear to us that many people walking around the world don't know anything about. But Srimad Bhagavatam just opens our eyes. We're very, very fortunate to see the Prabhupada is translated and given purpose like that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any other comments or questions? We're at the top of the hour now. Final questions or comments? Takeaways? If not, then thank you very much, Jenna, for coming on. Always enjoy your classes. We get a chance to have some nice discussions in your classes. So have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week, all the buddies. Vanchakalpataru Vishya Kripa Sandhya Evacha Patitanam
Vaishnavyo Namo Namo.
Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.